a personal friend of mine. I could say that in front of the name of every single person we've introduced. I am such a fortunate and blessed person. Miss Beth Baumann is a full-time digital marketer and political fundraiser. You can find her writings at everything, right? Armed American News. She's previously served as the political reporter and editor at The Daily Wire, associate editor at Town Hall, weekend editor at The Blaze. I mean, I'm name dropping all over the place. Somebody's going to have to clean up on aisle 2 over here. A contributor for The Truth About Guns, Bearing Arms, and Politichicks. Her work has been featured in Fox News, Washington Times, World Net Daily, and Real Clear Politics. And she also has been a guest on Gun Freedom Radio. All right. Here is the floor, Miss Beth Baumann.
You know, one of the most awkward things is having to write your own bio. You're never sure, like, how much info to give and how much to hold back. You don't want to brag, but you also, want to give yourself some credibility. So I apologize for that. My resume or CV spans all over the place. I've been fortunate enough to make a living writing full-time, even though that was something that I never did. Quite honestly, it was me trying to pay the bills after losing a job. And I've been fortunate enough to do that for the last 5 years, and up until recently went back to my PR roots. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit about going from being an activist to being a journalist. And I think there's a really big difference. Now, coming from the conservative world, my views are a little bit different. I will fully admit that everything I write will have a conservative bias to it, and those are the people, those are my readers. And I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not going to be like MSNBC or CNN and say, we give you the news unfiltered. Like, no. So I started out being, oh, there's a cricket right here. Interesting. No, there really is a cricket. So I started being an activist, protesting various things in college. Almost got kicked out of school for that. And no, I really almost did. NAU. Anyways, so I took my love of politics and my background in public relations and said, hey, I need to keep up my writing skills so that I can advocate for my clients. If I can't write a basic press release or a basic paragraph, how am I ever going to get my clients in the media? Well, that kind of transitioned me into a full-time writing career. And in the process, I always had a love for the Second Amendment, but I found my voice. And anybody who's read my work knows that there are 3 things I am always. Sarcastic. That's my brand, is sarcasm. And I really try to be relatable to the people. Put things into perspective. How does this impact me? Great. So you're an activist, but you want to be a journalist. Memes are great. They're funny, but let's be real. We're just playing to everybody in the room here. And we need to get more people in our movement and more people to see things the way we see them, because our rights and liberties are under threat. And the biggest way we do that is reading legislation. Okay. It is great to rely on the Second Amendment Foundation and NSSF and NRA for these talking points, but we need to go through and read the bills. Plain and simple. The last gun control bill, the Senate bill, I was the only person from what we've seen online to fully read the bill and do a bill analysis. And I did that while they were voting. Okay. So I did a Twitter thread. Here's what I found. Here's what they're going to do. Here's how that impacts you, And we need to get back to the basics of that. I know there's been a lot of talk about growing social media platforms or sphere of influence. I think that's great, but I think too many of us are afraid to do the hard work. How many in here have actually pulled up any kind of legislative bill and read it front to back? Awesome. How many of you guys are sharing what you find with other people? Awesome. How many of those things are being shared around? Are you being effective at reaching your audience? Or are you reaching the echo chamber? Right? And so that's where getting back to the basics, John kind of talked a little bit about this earlier about, going to congress.gov, about creating relationships with each other. But we need more people like me to sit down, read the bills, and disseminate the bills. And then those of you meme makers, go to town, because quite honestly, that's beyond my capability at times. I'm a policy wonk, and I think we need to get better about that so that we can reach new people. Actually, at the last JRPC I was at in 2018, 19, I don't know, wherever it was in Phoenix. One of my dear friends came and sat in the room because I was speaking, and she listened and she said, wow, I really learned a lot of things that I had no clue about. And I had all of these preconceived notions. So by breaking down bills and things like, expanding background checks, great, you're going to turn into a criminal if you will hand your gun over to a domestic violence survivor while she waits to get a gun. When you put it into perspective like that, that is breaking it down to everyday people with real impacts. The other side is great at using emotional appeals to abuse people. And I say it as abuse because they're conning people into seeing and believing that gun control is the way. And we can retake the narrative by, one, disseminating the information that is factually accurate from the law, and two, translating it directly into what it means. And that is a really hard concept to do. I think it's very easy for some of us to get lazy and to pull up like a really ridiculous CNN article, paste 12 paragraphs, and give our opinion. That doesn't move the needle. That doesn't change minds. That's just us agreeing with each other. And to me, that's never been the goal. I always want to put out something that, one of us can send to each other and say, hey, I know you don't know a ton about guns, but here's this coming down the line, and it will have a direct impact on me. That is how we start winning the narrative. That is how we start taking back our country. That is how we start really getting back to the heart of everything that this community is so passionate about. I have a saying that I wrote down. Where'd it go? I wrote it down. So, see, this is what happens when I wrote too long notes for myself. Know your goal, which is to protect the Second Amendment. Be accurate, not fast. I would rather publish something that is accurate that people can reference than to have to be the first one to say, oh my God, I got my name out there first, and then have to go back and stealth edit or have an editor's note. Be someone that people can rely on, and it's because of that integrity. I've had people like the NRC or various campaigns come to me and say, hey, we have an exclusive story for you because we know you have the integrity to carry things out. AWR is in the back. I'm sure he can probably attest to that as well. Being someone who, takes the time to do those things. Being an activist is about motivating people to get out the vote. Being a journalist is about informing them, and being both is a powerful weapon. So just remember that. Any questions? Wow. No. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. Oh, they want you to have mic.
We have pieces of legislation that are larger than the Bible. I mean, they're just insane. How do you know where to stop, when to give up, where to start?
So I'm weird, and I really enjoy reading that stuff. I read Bernie's 70-page free college bill knowing that it was going to be full of garbage, and I made it through that. I've made it through 250-page bills. I mean, you have to look at it for yourself and kind of make that decision and the cost-benefit analysis. My personal thing is I tend to go through and, kind of quick things and read things more in depth. And I love to do Twitter threads with these things because, one, it gets things out there faster so that other people can pick it up. I don't care if I found something ridiculous in the bill. If I want people to know how ridiculous it is, I don't need the credit for that. Like, someone else can take the credit and do it. So you have to choose that on an individual level. I can't really answer that. Yes.
I wanted to touch on two things. One, reading, understanding the bills, and then I'm a lobbyist in Virginia, so when we go to these committee meetings and stuff, the majority of the people sitting on the committee have no idea what the bill does. Mm-hmm. So being able to explain it in plain English is important. But I wanted to touch on something else you said because it's even more important. When you have a personal story that you can tell to the public and to the legislature, mm-hmm. it brings it home. It puts a face on the issue.
Absolutely. And one thing that I really reference heavily in my personal writings is the fact that I'm a sexual assault survivor. I get tired of being pegged as a woman who should be in fear for her life but never want to do anything about it. And I take back that narrative every single time. And I have no problem calling out, Don Lemon or any of them dummies. And I do. And so sharing that personal story is huge. That, again, that's a personal decision. If you have something like that happened to you, for me, it motivates me to prevent it from happening to other young women. And so I share that because that's something that everybody can relate to. I mean, how many people in here know someone that was sexually assaulted? Almost every single hand in this room went up. And I'm okay with admitting I'm a statistic if that means it can help stop it from happening to someone else. So if, you've been the victim of a violent crime, you're seeing that you're not going to be able to defend yourself or your family, share those stories because that changes hearts and it changes minds more than saying, well, this 10, them limiting high capacity magazines will prevent me from defending my life. What the hell does that mean to someone who isn't into guns? That 10 is safe and 11 is dangerous? I mean, you got to break it down. And that is huge, huge, huge. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I don't know if it's working or not. Oh, yep. Okay. So my question is, when you're still developing your credibility, what is the, balance between citing groups like, say, NSSF or the NRA or citing Heritage Foundation experts within your piece to add that credibility in, but also developing your own?
Time. I wrote for years without getting paid. I wrote for years without honestly seeking anything. I just did it because I was angry and I saw things that just made me cringe, and I felt like, I don't know, someone would care about my voice. It was never meant to be a career thing for me. It was more so for me to vent, and it just kind of happened. So I would say definitely utilize those people as a resource, include their quotes at times, but don't and I say this as a publicist, don't just print the press release. Don't rewrite the press release entirely. And Twitter's really great. If you share a screenshot of something you found directly in the bill text, put a screenshot, embed the tweet. There's proof, it's in black and white. And people need that because it's the equivalent of highlighting through, like what he said, a huge bill and bringing attention to a few things. So it takes time. Don't be afraid to ask questions from people and form relationships. I have a great working relationship with a lot of people at different 2A organizations, and there are times where I just call them up and I say, hey, off the record, am I reading this right? Is that the same summation that you guys came to? And there have been times where they go, that's a really good thought. I hadn't read it that way, but you're right. So developing those relationships is crucial, definitely. Any other questions? Oh.
Thank you. I was wondering if you could describe if you use any kind of automated tools. There's so much information.
So I'm a big Twitter person. I love Twitter. But a large part of that is just because even before I started doing writing full time, I was kind of forced onto the platform when I had political candidates as my client, and I had to tweet for them and do all that stuff. And over time, I've kind of personalized my feed to being a news aggregate. But we've talked about Google Alerts. We've talked about the advanced Twitter function is another one I like. Sometimes a simple thing as going to Google and typing in gun and seeing what the most recent news article is. Sometimes I go and I look to see what specific writers have written because I know that they tend to cover 2A or guns, either side. The gun feed is usually really great, although I don't know if he's been me it lately. That's kind of what I do. I mean, sometimes it's something as simple as, a news alert from, CNN and flipping the narrative on that in how I cover it. Any other questions? Awesome. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.